We have such a cool episode for you today. We get a chance to sit down with Alka, who actually works with us, but in our Bangalore, India office. And Alka offers a raw and genuine look at the realities of HR and recruitment for our own company, but also for all businesses alike. She blew our minds with a whole lot of wisdom, truth bombs, and really opened our eyes to some of the easily overlooked ways that culture really makes all the difference. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to Love as a Business Strategy, a podcast that brings humanity to the workplace. We're here to talk about business, but we want to tackle topics that most business leaders shy away from. We believe that humanity and love should be at the center of every successful business. I'm your host, Jeff Ma, and I'm a director at Softway, a technology company that helps transform company cultures. I'm joined today by co-hosts Frank Dana. Hey, Frank, how's it going?
Hello, good to see you.
And Chris Petrie. Hey, Chris.
Hello.
In every episode, we dive into one element of business or strategy and test our theory of love against it. And we have a very special guest today. For those of you who don't know in our audience, our company, Softway, has two offices, one headquartered in Houston, Texas, in the United States, and one in Bangalore, India. And our guest today is from our Bangalore, India office. It is Alka Bharadwaj, and she is an HR executive. But amongst all the many, many things she does for our Bangalore, India office, she also happens to oversee recruiting. And we've invited Alka today to join us because she has an incredible amount of experience and insight into the recruitment process. And her knowledge and experience has really shed some amazing insights on how culture is impacted by it and interacts with it. So Alka, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hi, Jeff. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know the time difference makes it difficult, and I really appreciate you joining us today. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Definitely. And believe me, it's a lot quieter in the evenings.
Yes. Good evening. And we always do icebreakers. So this will not be an exception. But as always, I'll make Frank go first. I like to pick on Frank.
What?
Yeah, we're going to have the same question for all three of you. So we'll have time to prepare here. But Frank, you do not have time to prepare. Today's question is, what was your least favorite food as a child? And do you still hate it or do you like it now?
My least favorite food as a child was my grandmother. Her name was Mormor. It's Swedish. I called her Mormor. No one needed to know that. She would make these Stouffer's spinach souffles, like the microwavable spinach souffle, which is spinach and egg and cream. And I refused to try it. So she'd make it. It was microwavable. So who knows how much microplastic was in the food she was eating. But anyway, and for years, she would always, and I would never want to eat it. I would refuse 100% of the time, never want to try it, never want to eat it. And then I forgot about it. And I was walking down the grocery store aisle a few months ago, and I saw it, and I immediately got these incredible like flood of memories of spending time with my grandmother and seeing that. And I thought, I've never tried this before. I gotta taste it. Like I've never experienced it. I despised it without even knowing what it tasted like. So I got home, I cooked it, I took a bite of it, and it was unbelievably good. And I realized that I had missed out on this delicious food because I was afraid of spinach, and I didn't want to have anything to do with spinach. And then I realized, oh my gosh, this thing tastes nothing like spinach. It tastes a lot like heaven. So I think that was it.
There you have it. So for all the kids listening to this business podcast, listen to Mr. Frank here. Got to try everything Frank. At least once.
That's it.
Chris, what was your least favorite food as a child, and do you still hate it?
My least favorite food as a child it continues to be meatloaf. It's the one thing that if God came down and made the perfect entree, like this would be the exact opposite for me, because it was just always it was gross, because it was just like, who wants to eat just like meat mushed together, baked? And no matter, and like everybody's like, your mom makes the best meatloaf, and I was like, I'll take your word for it, but I'm not about to try it. And so if that was ever on the menu for dinner, I ate all the sides and everything, and I will take like 2 bites of it. and it's just something that I've never gotten into. Still won't eat. It grosses me out. And so even now as an adult, my mom thought that I gotten over it. And so she'd be like, Chris, we made dinner. Why don't you come over and eat? And I was like, oh, what'd you cook? And she like, meatloaf. I was like, I'm gonna not be able to make it tonight. So I'm like, you didn't consider me when you were making that meal. Like
I'm fasting.
Yeah, this psychological warfare. Like, if anybody says, "Hey, I got you some meatloaf," it's an offense. It's not a gift. It's not considering me. So I'm still
Noted.
on that bandwagon.
Yeah,
Noted.
Jeff, cancel the meatloaf order.
Yeah. Alka, finally getting to you. What was your least favorite food as a child, and do you still hate it?
My least favorite food as a child was biryani, and it still is. So I'm one of the Indians who don't really like it.
What? Whoa! All biryani, like
the hot takes over here.
I am a vegetarian, and there are vegetarian variants also.
yes,
But still, it's not. I'm not okay with it. Anything but that.
Oh my gosh!
Like my mind has just been blown.
We have
and
to
I'm like, I fear for your safety now, to be honest. It's like you just told the world, like,
yeah, this is not the first time I'm getting these reactions. I've had this like, what? And like, yeah.
Okay. Cancel the rest of the podcast. We have to dig into this. Spend the rest.
We're going chef's table.
I've had some delicious vegetarian biryanis before, and I'm just like, what?
What is it about the biryani? Is it the spices in it? The way they do the
so
flavors?
it is. I feel it's too much spice, like too many flavors put together and dumped in one. Like, I mean, hey, you can use the spices in a better way. That was my opinion.
Incredible! Wow.
Wow.
Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your vulnerability sharing.
You have just unleashed maybe a new segment of unpopular opinions on love as a business strategy. I think this could be like something that we consider for future episodes.
All right. Well, let's dive into this. Alka, I want to start with you. Can you tell us and the audience a little bit about what your kind of role is? I know you do a lot of things, but in the context of today's topic around recruiting, can you talk about that process and your role in it?
Yes. So I think I handle at least I touch base with every element of the employee life cycle, from recruiting to their exit. So recruiting is not when we hire them, but rather when when the requirement comes, like when there's a request for a new resource. From that time till the job post, hiring, then onboarding, then managing employee relations while they are here, and even if they choose to separate from us, I also take care of the exit procedures, exit interviews, and managing their the other documentation that is required. So I touch base with the employee at almost every site. So I am the first phase of software and the last. So my culture and how my initial conversation starts is from there. I have to make that impact and show what we actually do. So I have to be in the right headspace even when I make one individual call to any candidate.
I mean, no pressure on you for sure.
Not at all.
I am Alpha and Omega.
All of it.
But when it comes to your experience, I think it's important for some of the listeners and viewers to understand the difference between recruiting in the West versus recruiting in the East, especially in India. I know it blew my mind when I first found out about it, because it's so different. And in a tech space, because we are recruiting for more technical roles in India, is just, I call it a bloodbath, but that's not always the best way to picture it. But when you think about like the competitiveness, it's not just with other employers, but also, you know, the mindsets and the societal pressures on a lot of jobs for these candidates, it weighs heavily, and it requires sort of a different approach and different strategies than you might consider in the US. And so if you could just illuminate some of the nuances and differences that you understand about, you know, recruiting in India versus maybe in the US or the Western world.
Right. So I think the IT boom in Bangalore happened when I was in school, and it still continues, although there was a recession in between. But there's never been a dearth of offers that the candidates have got, the good technology guys have got ever. Even when the pandemic hit, which was March 2020, even then the technology market in Bangalore was still booming. There were still people who were looking out for jobs. They were getting offers, not just one, but more than one. So what happens is there's so many companies in Bangalore. You believe me, every area, even a residential house is actually converted into an office. And like there are 10, 20 people who are working there. Culture, everything, all that is different. But you have a job, you have some technology work, you have a project work, and you can get the work done. And people go and do it. They don't care. So now what is happening? So there's so much competition, and I think it's still, I'm not sure how, I think most of the huge giants, from like the smallest of the startups to the biggest of MNCs, they all have set up shop in Bangalore. So, and since it's been remote, the place is not a problem anymore. They can be sitting in any corner of the India, and they can get 3 offers, and they can still get choose whatever job they want, and they can start contributing. So even, and the worst part, or I don't know, I cannot say it's the worst part, or I'm not sure, companies still have 3 months notice period. So even if I make them an offer, I have to wait for 3 months for them to join. And what happens to that is, in that 3 months, they have enough time to shop around. So if they are at a certain salary band, they ask for 50% and sometimes even 100% hike, because companies are willing to give it. That is the gap that we have with talented people. The supply is less and the requirement is more. So I asked one of the candidates when I was calling him, and I said, okay, do you know that you're asking for 100% raise? And he's like, yeah, I know companies can give me, and I know I'm worth it. So I am asking for it, and I'm not wrong. And I was like, yes, it's fair enough. And there are definitely companies who are willing to give that. So in even if I give him 100% hike, there is no guarantee that person would join, because he still has 3 months or 2 months to still shop around. So they show this offer that I've got 100% raise. So anything more than that, or you match me, or you give me more than that, and I'm going to come to you. Otherwise, I'm fine. I don't even have to. And there are, even I meet those candidates also who already have 2-3 offers, and they're still looking out. And when I asked them, okay, why are you still looking out? You already have what you want. They're like, it's always good to see what else I can get. And some candidates actually are honest that it's a startup. I don't know if there's a stability there. So I think, and there's a variable component that most companies give. Software doesn't do that. Whatever we offer is what we give them. But variable component is where, say 70% of it is actually paid, and the rest 30% is based on the companies and the individual performance. So it is subjective. And lot of companies where they've got huge offers, they only have 70% of that is for sure, and the 30% is because based on the performance, they want something that is where they can get 100% fixed. They want the same number, but they want the entire money in hand, rather than them having to wait on their performance or the company's performance and all that. So
wow, that's very intense. Yeah,
very different.
So I know, we talk a lot about, obviously, love is a business strategy. We talk about a lot of culture, and software is always at the center of that story. And not often enough do we talk about the India office, where this culture is, we're a constant work in progress as an organization and as people, but we also are trying, not just in the United States, but also in India as well. But as you mentioned, the environment that the Bangalore office lives in, all the surrounding companies and the talent pool and everything, plays by, like, as you just explained, very different rules. Can you talk about kind of how our approach to culture and just where we stand and what we value, how does that play with that difference? You know, like where does our culture kind of fit? Where does it doesn't fit? Where is it a strength? Where is it a weakness? Those types of things, just for that perspective.
Right. So I think it touches at every point, like how I said, from when I make the job post and when I start calling till the time we have we let them go. So I mean, not let them go, but in terms of if they want to quit, I'm saying. So in because there is so many companies, so many talent requirements, there are these recruitment agencies who have dedicated recruiters and sourcing people. For them, it's just a job. You're just another candidate, and the calls are very mechanical. But I cannot do that because I'm not an agency. I'm actually talking to get good talents to my company. So how I reach out to them, how I talk to them, am I polite? Am I rude? Am I being empathetic? If they're in a bad space, first I have to ask them, okay, is it a good time to talk to you? Because they may be in the middle of a meeting or they may be driving. You're not sure. So I have to put up that how we are naturally at Software, about how we follow or just be. I think we just be our culture. It's not like we are trying to do something. We are being it as people. And I have to be that with that candidate. So there were some interns that we were hired. We hired last year. They completed their internship and one of the persons left. So I asked him, like, okay, why did you choose us? What made you? There are so many other companies that you'll get the same stipend from, but why us? So he said, you made the conversation easy. It was never difficult. The interview process was good. The technical panel who took my interview, he was great. I learned a lot from him. It was not just an interview, but it was more of a conversation. And then I went and met the HR manager and Sunil and Parthi, who are our HR manager and operations head. They made it as a conversation. So at every stage, you made it easy. And I was comfortable. So the candidate was made comfortable. And I think that is one of the spaces where we give them an experience, but it's not just a process. And that experience is what sticks with them even after they finish their internship, or even if they leave Software. That experience and the time they had, like it's more than the work that you do or the experience or the processes that you followed. I think for every individual, it's how you make them feel, even when they are recruiting or even when they are separated, because a lot of organizations make people's lives hell because just because they resigned. And then notice periods are strenuous and painful, and it's so toxic, and all they want to do is leave. So what is the point of holding on to someone who's decided to leave you? That's always been bothering me, right?
Yeah.
If they know they have made a decision, at least thank them for their contributions for however long they were with you, and then just ease their separation processes. Even in the separation process that we do at Software, we make it easy on them. We talk to the IT teams to ensure to collect their assets. We talk to the employee, okay, this is your last day. Have you decided on a transition plan? We talk to the PM to see if they have understood and how the KT plan will go. And then we also ensure from our end, we also inform the accounts team so that they can ensure the payroll is stopped on the right time. And we ensure in terms of us that, okay, all the documents are in place, it's being sent to them on the last day. And we don't withhold their payroll for 2 months, which a lot of companies do again. We do the full and final settlement in that particular month in which they accept. So it doesn't hamper them. So all that is an experience. Yeah. And while they are here, at any given point, there are 5-6 of us in the HR team, and we have partnered with different track teams that we have. And at any given point, we are their point of contact. Anything related to admin, your leaves, even if you are having a lousy day, we always tell them, ping us, we'll talk to you. We always have an ear out for you. It's up to them that they want to choose to share it with us or not. But that also is because of the relationship that we build with them. And because relationships and behaviors are the crux of our culture, it's even if I have to give them a feedback, or if they want to give me a feedback, if I want to tell them something, ask them something, it always becomes easier if we build a relationship with them and they have a relationship with us. So
Wow.
I think that makes it very important for me, like at every stage of the employee, how we are and the kind of experience we give, all that matters.
So it's interesting that you brought that up, Alka, because if we want to have a little bit of a book time, page 29 of our book, if you want to turn with me there, physically or digitally, we've got our framework, which is the actual approach that we use as an organization and what we communicate to other organizations as how you can create better business outcomes through your behavior. And Alka, you showcased it by the way you communicated kind of every facet of the experience of an employee. When we are able to create a culture where we're able to treat each other well, treat each other with humanity, we can unlock business outcomes like cost containment, higher revenue, better performance, operational efficiency. All of those things can be unlocked by the way we behave. But there's a flip side to that as well. And the other side of it is what happens when we aren't behaving well with each other. And I think what's interesting about your position and what you are working towards and working on is you have a very interesting vantage point, at least from my perspective, around what it looks like, the invisible cost of misbehavior. And I think that would be a very interesting kind of conversation to talk about, because when most organizations or most individuals that we speak with, they say, how can you pinpoint what a bad culture is actually costing us? Because, we have a good culture, but you may actually not be taking into account the impact of behavior as it pertains to the bottom line. And I think that would be an interesting kind of conversation topic around what you've noticed and you've seen about how that can actually create the opposite of what we're trying to get, which is poor performance, employees leaving, reduction in revenue. Can we start there?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's very easy for people to say, because there are a lot of companies with very bad cultures who are still making great money. But what they don't see is what they are losing. So this happened when one of the teams, Software, were known for their internal disturbances. There were certain issues, but in terms of delivery, and they were winning projects, they were doing great. And then it got us thinking as part of culture and comms that, okay, then where is it tying into? What is happening here? Because there are disturbances, but they are generating revenue. Like, how is that? And then it got me thinking. And then because I was also hiring, and I'll tell you how it's connected. So because of the internal disturbances, there were people leaving that team. So not just the team, but the organization. And then I was making the job post. I was talking to the resourcing manager, the project manager, so many people who are talking about what kind of replacements do we get, what kind of new talents do we get. And then that led to me thinking, okay, when the person gives their notice, take from that point. The project manager has to stop everything. Instead of making the team better, he has to address this. He has to go talk to someone, his senior, any organization for that matter, his senior or his peer, where it can be, how it can be addressed. Should we retain them? Should we not retain them? That's a conversation. There's time spent in that. Then coming to next, then there's a talent allocation team that decides, okay, we don't have any internal talent, so we need someone new. That's another some time that is went there. Then they come to me, the HR team, and they'll tell, okay, we have to start recruiting, start your work, do what it takes. So from HR standpoint, technology becomes obsolete very, very quickly. Like, I think what is new today is old like tomorrow. So I need to rework on the JD. So I need to get the best of the tech guys in that meeting and then get the JD ready. That's some time. And then I have to post it in one of the websites, and I wait for them, and I wait for the resumes for 2 to 3 days, so that because I need to then get another technical person who can shortlist. And it doesn't make sense each time there's only 10 resumes, I call that person to shortlist. So I wait for like 30, 35 resumes, which can come across in 2 to 3 days. And then I sit with them for half an hour and then shortlist. And then sometimes it happens that in those 30, 35 resumes, I get just 2 good ones. So I know this portal is not working for me right now. So then I have to explore different portals. And the pricing is different. And each of these job posts cost something. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have it and we shouldn't get new talent. We should get new blood always into any organization, because that will help build a new process. But I'm talking specifically about the replacement, which is connected to someone who left because of a behavioral issue, of someone's behavioral issue in the team, or more than one. I'm not sure. So it's very case specific. And then after I make the job post, and then I have to schedule the interview in the next week. I set up at least 5 to 6 each week with different people. Say there are 30 resumes who came, 50 resumes. Let's take 50 resumes that come in. Then we shortlist 20 of them. So I schedule 20 interviews, and each of our technical interviews 1 hour. Whoever is spending, our internal talents, it's 20 hours worth of time. There's a cost of delay there. Then in that 20 hours, say 10 clear the technical round. Then comes the HR round. In HR round, we usually have 2 people. So in that 10 people into 2. So there's another 20 hours that is invested. And in that, say 5 of them clear both rounds, and I make them the offer. The competition is so hard here that I can expect 50% offer declines, meaning if I make offer to 5 people, I can only be sure that 2 will join. And sometimes I can't even be sure of that. So, and okay, say with our luck, I get 2 people who actually agree to join us. Then I have to maintain the connection during their notice period of 1 or 2 months so that they are engaged with us. And that is an investment. That is definitely an investment, but it's also time. Then what happens once they join, they immediately can't contribute, even though they are experienced. With freshers, there is the time that we have to invest in training them, in asking them what they require to learn. In terms of experienced people, they come with the experience, but they also need to understand the project. They also need to understand the people. Then that takes another 2 weeks. And then they contribute. So if you look at it, there is a huge delay.
That's amazing. And time is money.
Yes. And there is cost of relearning, because if the person, say all the behavior was good. Let's look at the other side now.
Right.
If the team is, if teams are high performing teams, high functioning teams, good behavior, they will only look at how I can make the project better, how I can make the code better, and all of this delay won't be there. And someone is also becoming unhappy while they are leaving. That will also cost our employer branding. Okay, you're talking about it, but I didn't get the experience what you're talking about. Then we have to address, okay, how do we make you, okay, you've decided, fine, but how do we make it easy for you? and the person's last resort would be to leave. Before that, they might have spent or they might have tried. That is
Yeah.
also an issue. And while all these interviews are happening, too many interviews also impact the interviewer's mental health, because they are taking away their time other than their work time. So 8 hours of work plus another hour they spend. That 1 hour is gone for them, and it's of no use if the person doesn't join.
Mm.
So there is time, there is mental effort, and there's a cost of relearning that will again lead to delay. So if they were high performing teams, and if they had a great relationship with the client, so we have a great respect as an employer, we have a great respect as a partner for our client, because it's a great team, good people, talk well, they manage well. And I think even for them, because like how Mohammed says that most of our awake hours we spend at our office, they'll be having a satisfied job, like where they are happy, where they feel fulfilled. But if they're in a setting which is constantly toxic, or if there's it's all an effort, right? It doesn't involve cost per se, but as a person it's costing them, as a company it will cost at a stage. And these things may not be monetary. Okay, I can give you the specifics of how much I spend for the job, but the time, the payroll that is given to me, that is given to our, not payroll, sorry, so salary that is given, it's all for the work that is being done. So everything is a cost.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No,
And I, as a recruiter, if I didn't have to recruit so many people and in this market, imagine what I could contribute to. I could contribute to our culture. I could have more one-on-ones with my people. I can build better relationships.
Mhm.
I can improve and build on the culture that we have, but that is stolen from me because I need to fill in the gaps of the talent that we have.
Stolen. Yeah.
Mhm.
I really appreciate you breaking down all the nuances of where these this cost comes out of the process, because I think a lot of people, especially our audience here, probably understands at a high level that turnover is bad. It costs something, and there's that inherent cost to it. But hearing all the specific places where time, money, energy, and inefficiency is sucked out of an organization is so important to hear. And I love that you connect it all the way back to behaviors, because that's the kind of message I think that's hard to get through to people, because people don't realize that whether you're a manager or anybody just in an organization, when you are in that meeting and you have that feeling, or you see someone say something or do something that's just wrong, and a lot of times we just end up being like, well, that's just Chris, that's just how he is. And we all kind of just accept those types of things, right? Like, we don't connect that thing that we're accepting is this starting point for all this other, really, even if you're just here to do the job, even if you don't care about culture, you don't care about love or people, you just want business success. Well, like, people don't connect that very behavior. You still have to care about behavior. If you're here just for the work, your work is impacted, because when that person who did that goes and upsets somebody else, or reaches a certain point for another team member, and that team member leaves, that team member's void falls back on you. That work that's left, that knowledge transfer you have to do for the next person who comes in, that extra rework you have to do to relearn what they were doing and fix it, all that comes back to you. And so I try to, I struggle. I'm so glad you shared this, because I think people don't get that. Like, some people, like, I respect people who are like, I'm not about, lovey-dovey stuff. I don't need to like become friends with my coworkers. I'm like, fair, but it doesn't mean you can disregard what the impact of culture to a business. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, and it's not even just about the behavior, right? I'm not telling that go love that person or give them a hug. No, don't. But Like, have you had a day where someone said something very mean to you and then your day was off? Because I've had
Mhm.
days where it started with a lousy meeting where someone really treated me in a certain way, and I couldn't make recruitment calls that day, which I had scheduled for 2 hours, because I know I should be in a good headspace to talk to a candidate because it's my first touch point with him or her. And it's just that simple. So imagine those teams where the leads or the managers are so toxic and people are almost dying every day just to work. Instead, just imagine them being happy and imagine how much the productivity can increase.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And-
It's not like they have to love their job to do it,
No.
but whatever they are doing, their
Yeah.
headspace will be in a certain way where they can actually contribute.
And I think the other thing that many leaders miss is how much of a person's role isn't documented anywhere. Right. So, yes, we can have knowledge transfer from the team, but the reality is that most of the knowledge that someone leaves with is not documented. I think it's a crazy high percentage. I think it's over 40% of a person's role is not documented. And so if you're expecting someone to step in, even in 2 weeks, let's say they get fully up to speed on the project, the client, et cetera, they still have to fill in 40% plus of the previous person's knowledge in order to be as effective as the person that left who may have been a high performer. And so when you factor in that type of hidden cost where you're like, well, why can't this team get it back together? They were such a high performing team a week ago, and now it's like, what's going on? And that costs the business. And many leaders just don't understand that impact.
What you said is like totally right, because when you said that, all I could think was, if I was a client facing person and I've built a certain relation with him or her, I just leave. The relationship also goes away. And that person would have built that kind of trust in me. And that is irreplaceable. The new person will have to forge a new relationship and build a new kind of trust, or spend enough time and consistent deliveries for that person to be trusted.
Yep.
But what do you say, that reference bias? I'm not sure.
Reference
Where,
power, referent power.
no, I think it's where you know someone and you want the next person to be the exact copy of them.
Yeah. Got it.
Recency
Yeah.
factor,
Yeah.
I think.
That's fine. We know what you're saying. Yeah. We know what you're saying. So if a client had a relationship with someone that left, they're expecting the next person to be just as good or the same or similar or treat them the same. And when that isn't realized, even if that person is great, even if that person is still handling the business of the client, it's still not the same. And therefore the client sees the partnership differently.
Yes.
And I think
it impacts a lot for the client too, right? Because it's like replacing a friend in another company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In services, much of the work is sort of therapeutic for clients, right? Like I always tell everyone that, like, we hear the client's real feelings. They can be honest with the vendor more so than they can be with their boss. The fact that, I think it's over 50% of people trust strangers over their bosses, right? We build that relationship where they confide in us. They share their innermost sort of feelings about the company, the direction the project is going, the direction the bosses are giving. And to have that sort of stripped, you can't transfer trust. Trust is non-transferable. So you can't just put somebody new in and be like, well, it's still software, hey, right? And then expect the same depth of relationship to be there. It has to be rebuilt over time.
I'm not talking about it as a third party. If you guys didn't know, I was also an engineer earlier. So I was actually a QA on one of the client projects, and I had to interface with the client for certain things, for some sign-offs. And the first few weeks, it was very mechanical, very transactional. And at every call they would have with them, I would naturally ask, how's the weather? How are you doing? Just before it starts. And it built relationship over time, and after a while they would trust me even if I recommend something to them. That was the power of relationships. And I couldn't do it if I wasn't in that headspace, or if I wouldn't give importance to them as a person, but not just as a client, but okay, they are also humans. They were in the UK and they had lousy weather on a lot of days. It was rainy, it was foggy, and they still made it to work. It was a big deal
Always.
for them.
Yeah.
I love the UK. I consider that, God misting and giving, some very beautiful green grass. Like when you fly into London, I'm telling you that grass is just beautiful.
The grass is greener.
And so I think it's just a cost they have to pay, but but also the benefit is that you get to wear some really nice coats. The coats in London are bar none. So
it just makes sense.
I see it.
It just
Yeah,
makes sense.
it's like so. But I hear you. It's still rainy, foggy, misty.
Let's have a Seneca session there, Chris. for all
Yeah.
of us. Fly me in there, please.
Let's go. I think it's interesting because oftentimes we talk about love on this podcast is literally called Love is a Business Strategy, but again, the core tenets and the pillars of love that we're talking about are these tangible, actionable ways that we treat each other, right? So we're not talking about giving people hugs. We're talking about trusting. We're talking about being inclusive, being empathetic, being forgiving, being vulnerable, being empowering. And when you have that in a team or in a group of people, you're naturally able to bring your full self, and you're able to create an environment for others to feel like they can bring themselves as well. And Alka, what I was thinking about too is how long it takes from someone to know they're unhappy in a team and then make up their mind to leave, and how much wasted opportunity by someone not even wanting to show up and do the work, but being forced to or having to because they just have to do the job, right? And so I think that matters, that even that time frame from when it could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years, when someone says, I'm not happy here and I'm kind of done, but they're still showing up to work. I think that's an interesting way of connecting those dots too, is thinking about the impact that has when someone has already checked out from a team, and the outsized role that a leader has in being able to produce a relationship, like you mentioned, that is founded on being more inclusive or empathetic or vulnerable or even forgiving, right? And that's why we talk about this so much, because we're trying to help people and organizations see themselves not as having to use the word love, but as having to act in ways that create an environment for people where all of this unnecessary stuff doesn't have to happen, and where you retain talent that truly wants to be a part of the team, and you're able to get great work done and not miss out on revenue.
I think another thing is we mistake what we say when we are giving back to the community. It's not that you have to go teach like 50 students or send money to somewhere. If you are being part of the system, if you're being part of any system, you are including people in you and contributing to your employees' mental health or your organization's success. Everything is giving back to the community, because who is community? We all are community. And if you don't have to plant like 100 trees to make a point, just get more happy people on the planet, and I think that should be a big deal.
I love that.
This is
Alka.
This is pure fire. Like what you're talking about right now is just incredible. Like, think about that for a second. Executive producer Maggie says, "Taking me to church." That's what she just said on the private. Taking me to church. What is community but people? And when we treat people well inside of a company, and they go home and are happy, and they treat their family well, and they care for their parents and their relatives, and they do for others as a result of feeling included, like it's beautiful.
Yeah. Can we sort of like shift gears a little bit? And like right now, and in many of our podcasts, we talk about the positive sides of sort of retaining the talent and like the regrettable attrition, people that you don't want to leave. But what we rarely talk about is when there are people who are not living those values, and what do you do with them? Because more than likely, those are not the ones who are leaving on their own. Most of the time, those are not the ones who are, getting recruited and or are entertaining offers, because one, they're likely more comfortable in their behavior and they've gotten away with a lot. They have been rewarded for their loyalty. We have been guilty of rewarding people for loyalty at Softway. But I know that that's also a challenge for many people, which is, you know, what is accountability inside of this culture? And, you know, as a recruiter, as someone who's, again, through that entire employee life cycle, what does that look like when you have those misbehaviors from people consistently that is costing great talent? Like, how do you, or what do you recommend for listeners and viewers who might be in that situation where it's like, I want my bad ones to maybe leave if they're not on board, and I want to keep the good ones, but that also means that the good ones have to endure to some degree these behaviors that we know are not good, while we try and uproot and sort of prune where necessary.
I think that, so yes, what you said is right. So when there are people who don't believe in these behaviors, end up impacting people who actually are living it, and it'll be like, okay, why are the rules different? I'm doing my best, but you're still being very mean and bad person to me. So I think feedback for me has worked. Like, I'm not perfect either. I've had my days, I've been mean to certain people. But when actually people brought it to my attention, it was difficult. Receiving feedback is not easy. But I've also realized it was my biggest gift, because I didn't wait to be so unchangeable that until then, if imagine my manager or any of you guys also had waited enough to give me that feedback, after a certain point I realized that that is working for me and I won't change. So I will continue to be a meaner person for everyone that I meet. And when I was told that, Alka, what you said was not right, I think you shouldn't have said it in this way, and I was like, I'm so sorry. I will thank you for keeping me in check. That was the most that has worked for me. So I think if you truly care for someone, uh, instead of being all fluffy about it, just tell them where they are going wrong. And I think at that point they may hate you, but I think the most close friends and the truest of friends of mine have called me my shit when I was that bad person. And that's why I trust them, that they are true and they are trustworthy, because they are not just about my good things. They also see my bad things and tell me that they have the right. It's not just about the right, it's about their true caring for me, that they have told me that, okay, you're not doing it right. And I think for anyone who's facing that kind of issue, instead of talking to everybody else, or which I have done, which I was guilty of, and I think I recommend that they directly talk to them and call them out, like, hey, I'm not feeling good about what you're doing, and I think you should think about it. And if they still don't think, it's on them, but at least you tried. If you don't try, if you don't say, they tell, right? If you don't ask, the answer is always no. So it's like that. So if you don't tell them, they will never know.
Yeah.
And that timely feedback is important for anybody, and nobody is perfect. Everybody can change for the better. It's like an English exam where there's always a better way to write an essay. You never get 100 on 100 there. Every person is like that. So I think everyone can change for the better, and it's just the choice of them, if you want to be better or if you still want to be stuck in the muck that you want to be.
Well, Alka, you're just full of true wisdom, and I really appreciate all this stuff.
It's amazing.
No, I've made so many mistakes that I had to do that.
That's that wisdom.
I'm still making it though.
That's where wisdom comes from. Yeah. So, oftentimes in the show, we're often narrowed in on individual, like we narrow in on like a leader, and we narrow in on just one person's role on a team and things like that. And I really appreciate this conversation, because I think we don't zoom out often enough to see the end-to-end process, as you mentioned. Even I called it recruiting to start, but really it's more than recruiting. It's like from sourcing all the way through the process and joining, and then while they're working, and then when they leave, there's a whole life cycle where culture is infused in every single part of it. And I really appreciate the amount of detail you shared here today to give all of us that, open our eyes to just how much goes into that, and just where culture can actually fit in every piece of it. And I think that perspective is so important, because when we narrow down to specific, we get we get too focused on just, we just got to be nice to people and we have to take care of each other. And it's important, but we also forget just this true business, the revenue impacts, the true costs, and the true big picture of it all, and why it matters, why we call it love as a business strategy, because the business benefits and hurts from these types of things. And so that was why we wanted to talk to you today, and we got that and more, and some philosophy mixed in there and everything, and just amazing insights. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Alka, for being here today, but also for continuing to every day away from this show, putting in the effort to make sure that love is felt, included, and experienced at Softway. So thank you so much for everything that you do, Alka, first and foremost.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was a nice conversation.
Absolutely. And I know this wasn't like I know Frank invited you, and at first it was like you were like, I don't know if I want to go, but you were an amazing guest, and I really, really, truly appreciated all the wisdom you shared and learned a lot. So thank you for that time and staying up late to do this.
Thank you so much.
For our audience, I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. And thank you for tuning in. Want to make sure I always remind you to please check out our book. It goes into detail about all these things that we talk about, and you can find it on Amazon and other retailers. Please do check it out. Love is a Business Strategy. And on the podcast, we post new episodes every Wednesday. And if you like what you hear, please do tell your friends, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, all that good stuff. And with that, I want to thank Frank and Chris as well. And as always, everybody, have a good day.